All right, I'd like to call the order about Louisiana Wildlife and Fishery Commission meeting of January the 4th. We'll call it to order. Let's see, Al, you want to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? To the flag, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Miss Susan, roll call, please.
Andrew Blanchard.
Here.
Brandon DeQueer.
Here.
Andy Brister.
Here.
Wendell Luno. Gene Reynolds.
Here.
Kevin Segura. Allison Sari.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, there are 7 commissioners in attendance. We have a quorum. Secretary Shadowin is also present.
All right. Moving on, we need approval of the January 4th agenda. Got a motion by Brandon, second by Gene. All in favor, state aye. Aye. All right, motion passes. Next, we have the adoption of the December 7th, 2023 commission meeting minutes. We did this, Fred, I'm sorry. Next, we have commission special Rose, right? Okay. Adoption of the December 7th commission meeting. So I need a motion on that.
So move, Mr. Chairman.
Got a motion by Al, second by Brandon. All in favor, state aye. All right. Next, we have commission special announcements and personal privileges. And we got several people that's exiting the the commissioners up here, and we got some other people that's retiring, and I'm gonna let Rob Chesney come up and do the literature on it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Board of Commissioners. I appreciate again the opportunity to stand before you, and I thank you for your service. We do have one whose service is, at least on this board, coming to a close. And it has been an honor working with you, Commissioner Sunseri. Your dedication, your perseverance, your attendance on a regular basis, showing up when you're supposed to. All of those are very admirable qualities. You've always been able to let people know where you stand, even if you were in the minority on this board, and I've always admired you for taking a stand in which you believe in. So your integrity and your honesty and your dependability will be missed. But you also serve with others who have those same characteristics. So for the service that you have provided, not just the Board of Commissioners of Wildlife and Fisheries, but for the guidance and leadership for our department, but most of all for your service to the people who are really our bosses, the people of Louisiana. On their behalf, I give you thanks. And we have something to present to you. And I will read it, and then if you'll meet me here, I'll give it to you.
Okay, if I may, before that, I'd like to say something.
You bet. Sure.
You have the floor. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I appreciate it. It's been an honor and a privilege to serve on the Wildlife and Fisheries Commission over the last 8 years. During my tenure on the commission, we've taken significant measures to manage, protect, and conserve the wildlife and the fish in Louisiana, while at the same time, commission actions have proven to increase our natural resources. We've improved the wildlife and fisheries fiscal health by setting new and fair licensing fees for the first time in over 20 years and are now closer to the southern state average. We provided the enforcement division with new technologies that help our agents respond more quickly to incidences in the field while protecting and serving the hunters, fishers, and natural resources in our state. We've tackled important issues such as cervid wasting disease, waterfowl regulations, snapper regulations, as well as blue crab, flounder, speckled trout, and redfish regulations with the intent to improve their abundance for future generations. The valiant efforts of our wildlife and fisheries first responders following the 2016 Amite River flood, hurricanes Laura, Delta, Zeta, and Ida were heroic and memorable. We've even made some strides toward electronic reporting for hunting and fishing that gives real-time data to our biologists and enforcement agents that will help manage our natural resources more precisely in a timely manner. I'd like to thank Ms. Susan Falcon, Secretary Shadowin, Tina, Assistant Secretaries Banks, Myers, McClinton, Pratt, Colonels Zecchinelli, Bear, Martin, and Broussard, Eddie, Stephen, Travis, Tim, Jason, as well as Cole, Scott, Larry, Dr. LaCour, Tommy, Jonathan, Steve, Christy, Zane, Jason, Chris, Denise, Andy, Vince, Peyton, Robert, Joel, Renee, and too many more wildlife personnel to name. And in closing, I'd like to wish the incoming Secretary, Madison Sheehan, as well as Deputy Secretary Stephen Clark and Ryan Montague best wishes and success in their stewardship of the wildlife and fisheries of the state of Louisiana. Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you, Commissioner Sinceri. We appreciate the words.
Yeah.
Thank you. Al, in appreciation of your dedicated service in helping to manage, conserve, and promote the wise utilization of Louisiana's renewable fish and wildlife resources, and their supporting habitats through replenishment, protection, enhancement, research, development, and education for the social and economic benefit of current and future generations. We present you this on January 4th, 2024 for your exemplary service on this board. Meet me down here, if I can get it out of the box. Here we go. I believe Commissioner Sinceri probably covered a couple of these names, but we do have some people here that are retiring after a lot of years of public service, and I did not want to let the opportunity pass without recognizing them. Scott Durham, who is a wildlife administrator, who is sitting right there. Yeah, just kind of wave to him. There you go. Go ahead. Scott, last day is January 9th. Did I remember that right? And also at the end of this week or coming up today, he is saying today, Ed Pratt, who has been our public relation and public information, is also going to retire. And he is right back here. Go ahead, Ed. I thank you, men, for your service and all the help that you have given me for the time I've been here. There's one other guy that's leaving. Me. With a change of administration comes a change of the cast who is going to be here next meeting. I am the least likely man to have ever been in this position. Have you ever wondered how in the world did God weave a path that puts you here?
Huh.
And yet it has been one of the most humbling honors that I've ever experienced. We had, I think I brought it, excuse me just a minute. Well, I would say, Ed, you're always ahead of us, but you were today. Thank you. This was handed out at the last cabinet meeting for Governor Edwards' administration. And when they handed it out, I wasn't real quite sure until I read, the finer print down at the bottom, and it said, oh, that's us, Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries. What has happened here over the last 8 years since Governor Edwards has been our governor? As I told them in the cabinet meeting, I have only been on this job since April of this year. I had very little to do with the accomplishments of this office. However, being in the secretary's seat, a lot of time I get credit for other people's diligent and hard work. They are the ones who are in the trenches and do this day in and day out. All of the scientists, all of our enforcement officers, all of our enforcement agents, all of the people that goes into the Department of Wildlife and Fisheries. This is their accomplishments. And I also would be remiss if it did not say that for most of this time, my predecessor, Jack Montese, implemented a lot of the changes that seemed to be working so well. And I wanted to make sure that he got credit where credit's due. As I come to a close of this service, I told you about 2 others that are retiring. I'm not sure I'm ready to be retired yet. So I will be looking for other services of what I can do to contribute to the stream of public service. But it has been an honor working with you. Each one of you brings a special set of talents and characteristics to this commission that, in spite of all our human frailties and differences of opinion, somehow it works. Winston Churchill once said that the American form of democracy is the worst form of government ever invented by mankind, except all the rest. It's amazing how we can work in this country and bring disagreements to a consensus if we will just listen to one another. Y'all have done that, and I thank you. So, as this is my last commission meeting, I also want to wish the best blessings on the new secretary, Madison Shahan, and the other administrators that are that will be here Tuesday. I will miss working, and I'm not going to look at them because I'll get teared up. I will miss working with so many of these people in this room and so many people that can't be here today because they're out doing their job. And so as I finish up my term as secretary here, all I can say is thank you. Thank you for your support that you've given the department. Thank you for all of the ones who have made me look a lot better than I am. It's not me. So thank you very much. And I will be seeing y'all. And in the meantime, keep up the good work. Remember that we're here to promote and protect and conserve our God-given natural resources, not just to make people happy today, but so that your grandchildren's grandchildren can enjoy this wonderful place we call Sportsman's Paradise, our beloved state of Louisiana. Thank you for your service.
Patrick, you want to say something?
I did. I appreciate you giving me some time, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to reiterate some of the things we've heard about Commissioner Sunseri. I wanted to just let him know my heartfelt appreciation for the work you've done on the commission. But even before that, Commissioner Sunseri, I came to know you the very first year of my career, and I've been here 23 years. You've been a leader in the oyster industry. You've been a tremendous source of information and help and guidance for me. As a biologist, as a young biologist, you've been a leader for the industry. And what I appreciate about you is you subscribe to similar things that I do: honesty and integrity, doing what's right, no matter what people want. And there's so many people out there these days who only know what they want. They don't care about what's right and wrong. They only care about what they want. And I appreciate you standing up for what is right and not just what people want. And I just want to tell you how much I appreciate you over the years, and I wish you the very best. And I'm proud to call you a friend. So thank you, Commissioner Sunseri. And I also want to thank the job that Rob Shadowin has done. He's done a wonderful job coming in and stabilizing our department during a pretty tumultuous time. And so he's always been somebody who's supported us as biologists, supported the science. And just like you, Commissioner Sunseri, he's supported us on what is right and not necessarily on what people want. And that's what our charge is to do what's right and to provide the science for you all to make good decisions and not base it on what people want. Sometimes what people want wins out, and that's okay. But you all have always, especially you, Secretary Shadowin, has always supported us on what the right science is. And we greatly appreciate what you've done for us as staff and coming in and really showing us how meaningful we are to you. I don't know that I've ever met a more sincere and more honest person than you. So thank you very much.
All right. Any other commissioners?
If I may.
Yes.
Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman, thank you. I don't know if we can or if it's appropriate, but if we could get a picture with the secretary and assistant secretaries, one and the colonel, so that we could just have it for memory purposes. I like to look back on these times and remember them, because this has really been one of the most important times in my life to have been able to be honored to be on this commission and appointed. So if we can take a picture together, I would love that.
Can we do that afterwards? Because we need to get a big camera. That's wide.
Absolutely. That'll be fine as long as we don't forget and do it. Actually, you know what? You want to do it, but do it before the end of the meeting.
Okay.
Okay? When you get that camera together, we'll go ahead and do it. And thank you, Patrick. I don't plan to, I'll be seeing you because I still go to the Oyster Task Force meetings because I will always have interest in that. And those feelings that you spoke about with our friendship, it's mutual. Thank you very much for those comments.
All right. Anyone else? All right. Myself, I'd like to thank, our Secretary Rob Shannon, because he's done an excellent job, for the work that he has done. He was kind of forced into this position and, not knowing what to do and what not to do. He's done a tremendous job at, keeping everybody motivated and, keeping the department together. And I just applaud you for your service, and everything that the department has done, and all of our commissioners that's up here. I'm sure, we all have your gratitude on what you've done, to keep it going. And we'll miss you and we'll miss all the others. We'll miss Ed, we'll miss Scott also. And we gonna invite, the new regime to come in and we'll see just how we can move forward next month there. And we'll continue on doing what's right for the state and for Sportsman's Paradise. I can assure you on that. So thank you, everyone. And if not, we'll move on to our next agenda item. All right, we have a receive and consider resolution. Oh, I'm sorry, it's Mr. Ed Skinner's turn.
Good morning,
Right,
Mr.
nope.
Chairman and members of the commission. The month of December, we had 2 boating incidents, no injuries, no fatalities, 1,275 written citations, 406 warnings, and 40 public assists. Few cases that were made last month is a brief synopsis of those cases. Enforcement agents cited 3 subjects on Joyce WMA for failing to abide by regulations on a wildlife management area. Agents were on patrol when they observed 2 trucks with an open dog kennel and a pirogue rack parked by an entrance to Joyce WMA. The agents began surveillance of the area and observed 3 subjects actively hunting waterfowl within the WMA. And at that time, WMA was closed to waterfowl hunting. Agents made contact with the hunters and found them in possession of 9 ducks, 2 hooded mergansers, and 2 coots. Agents seized the 13 migratory birds and donated them to a local charity. The subjects faced civil restitution totaling $322 for the replacement value of the illegally taken wildlife. 3 men were cited in Webster Parish for hunting deer during illegal hours and violating the Airborne Hunting Act. 2 of the subjects were also cited for deer tagging violations. Enforcement agents started an investigation on November 28th about a deer that was illegally harvested on November 22nd near Mendon. During the investigation, agents learned that the subjects utilized a drone at night to locate an 8-point buck and then used a shotgun to harvest the deer. Agents also discovered that the deer was tagged improperly by the wrong hunter. Agents seized the deer, the drone, and the shotgun, and the men faced civil restitution totaling $2,033 for the replacement value of that deer. A Chalmette man was arrested in St. Bernard Parish for violating charter guide regulations, violating hunting guide regulations, taking alligators without a license, taking alligators from an unapproved area, failing to tag deer, taking deer using illegal methods, taking deer during a closed season, hunting deer from a public road, intentional concealment of wildlife, selling fish caught recreationally, and failing to comply with recreational offshore landing permit regulations. Agents received information that the subject was acting as a guide without the proper licenses and started an investigation. During the investigation, the agents learned that the subject was in fact not properly licensed to guide, was selling catfish caught recreationally, illegally harvested an alligator in September without an alligator hunting license, and used a tag that was not for the area that he hunted, and he harvested a deer with a rifle during the archery-only season that he failed to tag. That subject faces civil restitution totaling $3,625 for the illegally taken wildlife. That's the end of the report, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions? For
You know-
Ed?
No questions, but a comment. And I'd be remiss not to say this about Major Skinner. My first meeting, Major Skinner gave this enforcement report, and I had listened to a bunch of enforcement reports for over 20 years on the Oyster Task Force. And the first thing I did was to go to the chairman of the Oyster Task Force and say, look, we need to have a similar type report at those Oyster Task Force meetings, because what would happen, they would go off in all these different directions. And if you were able to have a report where all the incidences were available, you could set up questions for later rather than spend a lengthy amount of time on those things. So I wanted to bring that up to you, Major Skinner, because it's because of you that the Oyster Task Force has done that, and it's made things much smoother. And I appreciate that.
Any other questions? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you there, Major Scanner. Ed, if you are ready, we'll go ahead and take that picture before we move on. Invite, yeah. Rob, if you ready and Rachel. All right. Next, we have a receive and consider resolution adjusting the boundary and acreage of the Biloxi Marsh WMA. Cole Garrett.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know a lot has been said about the service of Commissioner Sunseri as well as Secretary Shadowin. I echo all those. It's been a pleasure to work with you both. Thank you very much. I would be remiss if I didn't say something about it. So I know y'all are here to hear about a resolution, but I wanted to share that. So we were approached by the lessors of Biloxi Wildlife Management Area, the Biloxi Marsh Corporation, and they had some concerns and some issues with their insurer of the property. Could not get their property insured for a reasonable amount anymore because of some concern for the public's use of the property. I explained to him that the state of Louisiana has recreational immunity statutes that protects them. Also that the state of Louisiana is self-insured, has a $5 million policy on this property, and will certainly be the first ones to utilize that insurance policy and indemnify the Biloxi Lands Corporation for any incidents that may occur. They understood that. Unfortunately, their insurers did not. So a request had been made to amend the existing lease just to confirm those things that are already factually based in law, as well as with our self-insurance. So we undertook going ahead and making that amendment to the lease. As part of that amendment, there was a second request, which was on the southern edge of the Biloxi Marsh, where Bayou La Lutra bounds the southern portion of it. In section 14, it used to dip down to the section line, and the request was to just let Bayou La Lutra be the southern boundary of the Biloxi Marsh, the Biloxi Wildlife Management Area. And so we have made those changes with the lease agreement. The current lease agreement continues on through 2037, but because we are reducing the acreage and modifying the boundary by 254 acres and making Bayou La Lutra the southern boundary of the Biloxi management area, we needed to have a resolution letting the public know that's what we're doing and memorializing that. So that's what this resolution does. It modifies the boundary and then go ahead and confirms and reaffirms the remainder of the acreage within the Biloxi Marsh WMA. And Miss Susan, if I could, I'll get the screen up here and I can show you on the map what we're doing. Maybe. It's a JPEG. Oh. Sorry, bear with me. Joel's coming to my rescue.
To make it.
Okay, I had it zoomed in a little bit, but the green area that you see at the southern portion, right there is the residual of section 14 that is now being reduced. And you'll see that Bayou La Loutre, which runs, north and east from section 14 is going to create the new southern boundary. So that's what this resolution does. It removes 254 acres from the Biloxi WMA. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Cole?
Just, you mentioned that the current lease runs till when?
Till 2037, I believe. It was renewed in 2012, and it's a 25-year lease.
That was gonna be my next, they're renewed in 25-year increments.
This one does. When we first started, they were 10 years with a 5-year renewal. It was originally done in 1957. It's been renewed and updated several times. Acreage has kind of changed here and there each time that's occurred. But yes, the current term is a 25-year term. Thank you for your consideration.
All right, we need a motion on that?
Yes, sir.
We need a motion, y'all. Who was it? We got a motion by Brandon, second by Gene. All in favor of the motion, state aye. Aye. Motion passes, so the resolution will be adopted.
Thank you.
All right. All right. Next, receive and consider notice of intent for rules changes establishing season dates and associated rules and regulations for the 24-26 hunting season. Tommy, you have the floor.
Well, let's go from the beginning. So good morning, Commissioners, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. I hope everybody had a good holidays. Happy New Year to everyone. This is my favorite time of the year. Christmas is my wife's. They know I process is my favorite time of the year. So there's a lot to bottle up in here, but we won't get into that. So I'm ecstatic to present to you the changes for the hunting seasons of the WMA rules and regulations. But before I start, I have to start by thanking the staff, because I tell you every year, and for those who aren't just part of this presentation for the first time, this is a year-long process. We are getting public comment through this process, but staff in the field, they're getting public comment from people. They're observing what's going on during the hunting seasons. They're taking notes. We collect that information all through Young. When I say staff, I mean department staff. We're talking enforcement. We're talking Office of Fisheries. We're talking about Office of Wildlife staff. We get together September, October-ish. We go over that stuff, kind of approve what we're going to give it to our Assistant Secretary and Mr. Loman, our Deputy Assistant Secretary, and they give us the approval of what we bring forward to y'all. So what y'all see today is a combination of a lot of effort, of which I am presenting, or I have given the least amount of effort putting this together and presenting it to you. But with that, I will also make a special thanks to Miss Susan, even though she doesn't like me to thank her publicly, but she's the one that keeps me in line. She helps me out, formats this document. And Dr. Jack, he also is a wonderful editor. If you ever have to, and he's very humble. He says, I may be mistaken, but that means I'm wrong, you're right. And I just go ahead and make the change. So, but special thanks also to Major Rick Owens. I know Colonel Zeccanelli, we've been very involved the last few years, but Major Owens actually sits in the entire meeting, provides enforcement perspectives. So it's a lot of teamwork that goes into this document. And Cole, do you want to go over how this process, we generally do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is kind of a different rulemaking than what we typically go through, because it is our hunting regulations for the year. This January meeting, you're going to get the notice of intent delivered by Tommy, and you will have an opportunity to make any amendments to it as you see fit. However, it comes out of this meeting is what's going to be the notice of intent that gets published in the register. That doesn't mean it's final. In fact, you will have 2 more opportunities, both in February and March, to make conditional amendments to that based on public comment that comes in or discussions that you have with the users of the state. We will then take those conditional amendments, put it out for public comment in April, and then in May, you will come back and vote up or down on those public comments and make the final decisions there. It will then lie over in June, go to oversight, and be finalized in July. So that's kind of this is a long process. This is not your last opportunity to make changes to it, but you are kind of setting the table with the notice of intent this month.
Thank you, Cole. Very good explanation. And just so y'all know, I will already be editing the hunting pamphlet in April, 3 months before you have final rules. So it's a year-long process, but I'm excited to get started. So with that, here are the sections that we'll be covering today: the resident game hunting season, general and wildlife management and hunting rules and regulations, and the general and WMA hunting regulations, migratory bird season regulations, and bag limits. So we'll start off with the resident game hunting season. So if you've been part of this in the past, you will notice this is the smallest amount of changes that we have ever proposed, at least since I've been doing this or been supervising somebody who has done this. So with that, actually, we made a change to this language last year because that language is generic, and then you run into the 5 Saturdays in October, sometimes in November, and sometimes in December, sometimes in January. We're always tweaking this language. So the change we made last year didn't fit. All we're doing is modifying this language to fit when there are 5 Saturdays in November. So that's the change. It wasn't a change in any season dates, but at some point it will become an issue when there's 5 Saturdays in December. So we're just preemptively changing this. With that, we'll move to the general WMA hunting rules and regs. So throughout your document, you'll see my changes are in yellow and they're underlined or they're struck through. I'm not going to cover every one of those because some of those they're either redundant and we're trying to clean up the document, or it's just a clarification of things. And I don't think that's something that you need to really, worry with. That's my assumption. If you want me to answer questions and you have, feel free to ask. So the use of drones on recovery of wounded deer or bear. So Major Skinner referenced an actual case they made with this. So I want to make it clear, talked to Major Owens yesterday, just so we were on the same. So it is a violation of the Federal Airborne Hunting Act to use a drone to participate in the take of game, I guess deer, it's birds or resident quadrupeds. This does not mean that you cannot use a drone to recover a dead animal. Okay, this is a wounded animal. You cannot use a drone to fly over. If the animal's still alive, you cannot go in there with your dogs, or you cannot use that data to go dispatch that animal. If you go up there, you can't find a deer and you go up to the drone and that animal's dead, then you can use that data to go recover that deer. So I want to make sure that everybody's understanding what we're proposing here. Okay. Language adjustment to clarify retrieval of deer with aid of tracking dogs. So what we're seeing is a lot of people, it's a sport to wound a deer. You clip it with an arrow or a bullet, it's going to live. They stick the dogs on it. They have retrieval dogs. They have chase dogs. They actually catch these deer and they kill them. It's otherwise an animal that may have survived, right? If you would not have chased them with a dog, had the dog bay it, kind of like hog dogs, and it dispatches deer. So what we're using is updating this language to say any dog use a trail or retrieve mortally wounded instead of unrecovered deer. So it has to be a mortally wounded deer for you to be able to use those dogs to recover that deer. Clarification of deer area 3 boundary. There's some language updates as making it clear. So we're just describing this hopefully where it's more clear to our users. We provide maps and you can map it out, but it's a little bit, obviously you can see there's a little bit more information to provide. There's no change in the area boundary. It's just, we're describing it differently. So it's more clear to our users. Update on the deer area 6 boundary. So Parish Road number 7 no longer exists. It's actually Louisiana Highway 964. So we make that change. We eliminate Parish Road number 7 and we update that language to include Louisiana 964. And sorry about the touch. Well, I went crazy. All right. Change of information needed for items left overnight on WMAs. If you left a stand overnight, you removed from the tree and placed it on the ground, you used to have your name, address, and phone number attached to that stand. We just say now you need an LWF ID number because for enforcement purposes, they can get all that information from the LWF ID number. So it's a privacy deal. There's no reason for me to walk up there and it's an attractive male or female that I'm interested in and get their name and phone number and stalk them. So just trying to eliminate that. All right. Alexandria State Forest, moving to the WMAs, closure of small game hunting during firearms seasons for deer. So same as that, except closed during deer primitive firearms, either sex, firearms either sex, or deer firearms bucks only, just a safety issue. We don't want to have a lot of people squirrel hunting, rabbit hunting without camouflage when there's high-powered rifles during deer season. And so it's very, the season is very short, so it's a hopefully minimal impact to those users. Bayou Mason WMA, if you remember last year, we closed Sherburne, Richard Yancey, and Grassy Lake turkey seasons. Then we did a declaration of emergency to close them. So following up with those same impacts, we have some issues on Bayou Mason, and later on you'll see Beth WMA. So we propose to close the turkey season because there's been impacts. They're obviously in the Mississippi Alluvial Valley floodplain, a lot of rainfall in the spring, a lot of flooding, generally deterioration of habitat. We're proposing to close those turkey seasons on Bayou Mason and Beth, but I'll get to Beth in a little bit. So change for small game emphasis area on Bodcall. We're just going to add another month where people can use their dogs and train their dogs on the small game emphasis area on Bodcall WMA. Beth, this is the one I talked about. We proposed to close the turkey season as the same as we did for Bayou Mason. There's some habitat and biological reasons there. Bussy Break, this has come from Fisheries, a proposal to require permit for tournament fishing. Commercial activities are prohibited on WMAs. Allowing them to have tournament fishing with special use permit is what Fisheries recommended, so they can host bass fishing or crappie fishing tournaments as long as it's permitted. So renaming them, you saw these updates all through the document. So the Louisiana National Guard, they wanted to change Camp Beauregard to Louisiana National Guard Training Center at Pineville, WMA. We worked with Commissioner McPherson and said, like, it's kind of a wonky, not really, it's just kind of a long name. And so we tried to name our WMAs based on geography where people are familiar with them. So we made the suggestion to General Keith Waddell at the time, and we agreed to do Esslerfield WMA. So that was a lot of work. Name change from Fort Polk to Fort Johnson. Vernon WMA is the Vernon District of Kisatchie National Forest is also in that WMA. So Fort Johnson, Vernon. And then Peason Ridge is owned by the Department of Defense. They, at some point, feel like it will become part of the Fort Johnson installation. So it's now renamed Fort Johnson North WMA. Dewey Wills, prohibition on vessels at certain times during waterfowl season. So the Catahoula Basin, Little River Basin, Old Catahoula Lake, however you want to refer to it as, so we're all clear. There's a lot of disturbance out there. Historically, it's been open to everybody. There's a lot of disturbance. There's people scouting. There's people running airboats, people running mud motors where mud boats and airboats are illegal. Because the department now owns that piece and it is Dewey Wills WMA, we feel like we need to kind of control some of that disturbance to the wildlife and the resources. So we're proposing that all motorized vessels are prohibited 2 p.m. to 4 a.m. and all nighttime activities prohibited during open waterfowl season except for the basin buffer zone, which remain. So the basin buffer zone is basically the state water body throughout the center, and it's part of the WMA, but we left it open so people can traverse the lake legally. Point of Chien WMA, clarification of open activities and allowable gear. The area is closed to all except youth deer hunters when the youth deer season open, and then limited use areas, archery only, firearms prohibited. Archery, the reason the limited use area is archery only because it is adjacent to the Montague Elementary School, so we're keeping firearms away from the school. That's why it is archery only. So it's a safety issue. Russell Sage WMA, prohibition of motorized vessels at Wham Break. So sort of along the same lines that we're talking about Catahoula Lake, there is a ton of people that are scouting and disturbing these waterfowl as they're trying to, rest and take care of their physiological and ecological needs. We're proposing to close all motorized vessels 14 days prior to the open day of duck and teal seasons, excluding the youth and veterans day. So that would obviously allow the youth and veterans to use vessels and internal combustion engines on those days. Also closed all motorized vessels during waterfowl season splits. And so we're going to even close it during the split. The ducks need a chance to take care of what they need to take care of. So we're proposing to stop all the rallying the ducks and, just boat riding and enjoy riding. So putting the resource first here with this proposed. Changes in the waterfowl lotteries. So Sherburne WMA South Farm, you show up that morning, we draw a lottery and you decide you get to hunt. The problem is if there's more people than opportunities, people have to go home. We're gonna make this to where you can do it that week or on our own system. That way, if we feel like if I live in North Louisiana, you probably can't tell from my accent, but I can live in North Louisiana. I'm not going to drive to Sherburne to participate in the lottery on the off chance that I may do it. So we may be restricting people that participate on the Sherburne South Farm, if I apply for that lottery and I do get chosen for Wednesday, I'll drive down. So just trying to make it a little bit more user friendly and open to more people. So other stuff, the changes in the waterfowl lotteries, used to have to contact the Lafayette office. We're all online now, so it's hunting by pre-application only. That's the only thing going on here. And so with that, that kind of ends at general WMA and hunting regulations. So general and WMA turkey regulations, we have none proposed for this year. However, I am supposed to remind you that you are currently considering the change to the turkey area A turkey seasons that Dr. Duguay presented a couple of months ago, where lands east of the Mississippi River would be in turkey area A. They're currently closed. So just a reminder, that's still on the table. It has not went through final rule and been approved yet. Is that correct? All right, Miss Susan says it's correct, so it's correct. So we'll move on to migratory bird seasons, regulations, and bag limits. So I won't go through this. I'm sorry for saying so much. I won't go through this ad nauseum and repeat all the dates. Woodcock is always 45 days long. We start at January 31, back up 45 days, and that ends up at December 18th, if you're wondering. So that is how, so our woodcock seasons never change. It's 45 days, and we start the end of January and work forward 45 days. Migratory bird season, bags and possession limits. No change to the bag limit, no change to the possession limits. Here's your dove season, and they're just basically some calendar adjustments. And Dr. Duguay is our the guy who gives us the waterfowl. So he takes public comment, and there's obviously public comments of when the season should be structured. We made a change about 4 years ago on that. So these are mostly just calendar adjustments. Early season teal season. So we're just backing up a day. So it is a calendar adjustment. So it'll be September 14th to the 29th. Kings and clapper rails, they run concurrent with that early teal season. So it is a calendar adjustment there also. Soar and Virginia rails, same thing. Gallinule, same thing. Snipe, calendar adjustments. People say, well, you're running it longer than December 3rd. There must be 5 Saturdays or in one of those months, which makes it change from December 3rd to December 8th on that first closure, and the 21st. So there's a 5-day change. So it must be 5 Saturdays in one of those. Must be December. Ducks, coots, and mergansers. So here's our proposed dates for the West Zone. November 2nd, November 3rd. That's the youth and veterans only. A lot of people comment, why is the West Zone youth and waterfowl and veterans waterfowl days at the beginning of the season, and the East Zone is at the beginning and the end? Well, it's a habitat deal. East Zone is in the MAV. Water's not as reliable as the coast. And the West Zone, where you're talking about more about inland reservoirs and the coast, which always have water. So we give an opportunity for those who have water in the East Zone. They may not have them, but they have that opportunity at the end of this framework if they choose to take advantage of that. So some calendar adjustments, although it is a little bit different than what you see what we did last year. So East Zone, these are basically just calendar adjustments as they line up with the calendar. Light geese, snow, blue and Ross and white-fronted geese. So calendar adjustments, they kind of run concurrent with the waterfowl seasons, but the season is longer. So you see the ending date is different there. Canada geese, same seasons, some calendar adjustments, but it's the same as the previous slide. Light geese conservation order. So the conservation order is open during the splits, and then for a period of time after the season ends, from January 7th to March 2nd in the East Zone, and February 8th to March 2nd in the West Zone. So no change in the bag limit, no possession limit. Falconry dates, calendar adjustments again for those folks that are interested in falconry. And then if you saw that the Corps of Engineers, Indian Bayou, Barataria, I can't remember, there was several properties that were at the end. Our enforcement did not have the ability to enforce on those federal properties due to some sort of federal enforcement jurisdiction. So the easiest thing was to do is to roll them in Title 76, make it a Louisiana administrative code rule violation. So we rolled those properties into the notice of intent. I didn't figure those regulations already exist. All this does is simply give our LWF enforcement to the ability to write citations on those federal properties, which is why I'm not covering them. You see them at the back of your notice of intent. With that, I will entertain and hopefully answer any questions, as this is the first time I'm looking at it as you.
Thank you, Tommy. Good presentation.
How many more years do we have of the two split system?
I'm gonna defer to Jason Olsack on that. When Jason, I thought he was here.
I think Jason's flying today.
Okay. So it'll be 3 years before we can redo the zones and splits, is my understanding.
Okay, I was just wondering. I know, okay,
You asked
because,
You asked about the splits. Are you concerned about the zones or the splits?
well, we can't make any change in zones until this is over.
It's up to two splits. So if you don't like the
Yeah.
two splits in the west zone, you can use one or you can use 0. You have flexibility to change the splits. You don't have flexibility to change the zones.
That is correct. That's why the
That's-
east zone only has 2 segments and the west zone has 3 hunting segments.
Gotcha.
So,
And I
Yeah.
only brought that because you said about the splits.
Right, right.
So you
Okay,
do
yeah,
have
the
flexibility
zone
there.
thing is whenever it can be revisited, I'm sure we'll do public outreach. We'll get input and all of that and see if there's any reason or a desire to change. Okay, thank you.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Barry.
it.
Any other further questions?
I do. Tommy, wanted to direct your attention to the tracking dog provisions and drone thing. My son's trying to teach me how to use a zone. I'm not too good at it yet, but I'm trying to get there. But I've always used a dog. I bow hunt almost exclusively and, compound bow. And, I've used a lab. Mine unfortunately died of cancer last January and I hadn't replaced him yet, but 20 years I had a dog that would go find my deer, whether 20 yards or 100 yards.
Right.
It's just something I did. But at any rate, my dog doesn't know whether it's wounded or mortally or not until it gets there. And I don't, if I make a liver shot, obviously it's mortal, but, maybe further track than obviously a double lung shot. So I'm a little worried that there's going to be some splitting hairs here that a hunter is not going to know until the dog has located it and you've laid eyes on it and go, oh, okay, well, the hair is in his shoulder. Maybe he'll live or what have you. And then you're trying to make a judgment call based on, your dog tracking the deer, doing its job and getting to it. And yes, and I think it is unfair just to nick a deer and send a pack of dogs on it. I mean, that's not what you want to do, but I don't want to get honest people like myself caught up in breaking rule violations that they don't really comprehend that they're breaking or have no way of determining until they lay eyes on the animal as to whether it was a great shot or a marginal shot.
Right. And so I'm going to defer to enforcement on this, but I think what we're trying to eliminate is you bump that deer with your dog and it gets up and then you send chase dogs on there. That deer's not mortally wounded. Now it is going to die because a dog has got a doe by the nose. But I'll let Major Owens answer that question specifically. Obviously, they use their skills to determine intent.
Good morning, Commissioners. So to your point, you are correct. Changing the language would, in fact, require enforcement to define mortally wounded, basically from case law. It's our goal to use best judgment in those types of situations and to avoid what we have been recently seeing with the deer that are minor, very minor injuries. And basically the situation turns into a dog hunt, and deer basically running at full speed. So it was our goal to possibly create some language to where we could downstream unpack that situation based off of, because currently unrecovered is such a vague and loose term. In theory, the animal would not even have to be hit. You could have just attempted to hit it and not recover it. So we were just trying to put some clarification into the verbiage to where mortally, in fact, put it more in a situation to where the animal was recovered and still needed to be dispatched, but was not in a situation to where everybody involved felt the animal could have lived. That is a word that is undefined And so you would be correct in the fact that if we were to go forward with that particular type of charge, the burden would be on us and the courts to basically establish case law on that language and basically draw some boundaries through that process, since we didn't define it on the front end. And I don't know that we could. It's such a, a moving target at that point. But the current situation with the complaints we received kind of dictated that we make an effort to clean that language up a little bit. And mortally wounded is a term that is used by other states. And so that's why we moved that direction.
In the drone thing, I get how, okay, so I learned how to fly the drone, which is hard for me. I'll say I learned how to fly it, and, I go out there looking for the deer I just shot with my bow and somehow happen upon it. And how do I tell whether it's I can't get it low enough to go, okay, that's a good liver shot. No, that's a double, no, I got one lung. It just scares me that you could go out there with all the great intentions in the world of recovering an animal that's recoverable, but only to find out, oh, well, I just messed up. I broke the law.
So that's a great point as well. We're just now starting to unpack some of that, as you heard in the news release. But what we are trying to do is determine some boundaries with the verbiage of the Federal Airborne Hunting Act that is already in place, and the drones are coming on kind of after the fact. And so finding a place to put those within the confines of a federal act is becoming complicated for some of these operators, because they can in fact very quickly find themselves in violation of the letter of the law, because the term use or aid in recovery, in the act, use or aid is very, very vague. So that while how Tommy mentioned it, it's completely acceptable to use that device to find a dead animal, but that operator is putting himself in a position from really an integrity standpoint of, once he receives information or data on the status of that animal, he is in fact has to make a decision of whether to engage or not engage. And it's just where we're at with that regulation, and it is a difficult position. Several drone operators have contacted us, and that is their main concern, is they go in good faith, and then by their operation of the drone, a client, if you will, somebody that's hired them, takes action upon that information. That individual has compromised the operator, even though he didn't have intentions of that happening. So, it's really the advice we are giving to operators is to take their deposit or their money up front, and then the burden's on them. If they in fact identify that animal is alive, the federal act requires them to walk away from that. That has proven to be difficult for some of our operators.
Like to comment on this too, is that I've got a drone myself that I've used to pursue deer before at night and see where they are after we've shot it with bows. And in fact, I've run across a case scenario where one was not hit well, backed out, let him be, because we figured he would live to see another day. My question is kind of the same thing you just commented on, is that when you come in, even from a dog standpoint, if someone calls me and says, hey, I'd like to bring a dog because we shot a deer, I guess to not deter people away, because we want people to recover these animals, how would I know, as a person who has a dog or has a drone, if I go in there and someone hires me to come do that, that they're not setting me up almost for failure from that standpoint, where they know that, hey, I didn't make a good shot, but they don't disclose that information for me? Is it from where we can make them sign a waiver that says, hey, to the best of your ability, you knew that you tried your best to make him, to harvest this animal and not just wound it for the fact that we're going to go chase it with a dog or follow it with a drone?
So that would be a great business model, to pursue. The truth is, we don't know either ahead of time. Generally, when these types of situations come up, we're unpacking this situation after the fact, and we're going back on possible drone footage, cell phone footage, stuff of this nature. You could in fact have an animal after the fact that, once it's looked at by a biologist, that might have simply had a back strap or a brisket that had a bow cut on it, and may have been shot and woundedly killed, mortally killed afterwards. But when you looked at it, there was significant information up front that said this deer possibly, most likely would have survived. That's the dynamic we're dealing with here with the verbiage of mortally wounded, unrecovered. It's quite complicated.
I guess my thing for this is that just to make sure that if we do have this, we do go forward with it from this standpoint, that we can provide something to people who are going to provide the service to protect them where they're called in to provide a service. You see what I'm saying? If that someone comes in and they're coming in green on the situation, they don't know the hunter, but they're getting hired to come do this or bring a dog, and that they can provide them a waiver that almost protects them, saying, hey, here's where we're at. So they're not assuming liability for something they have no idea about.
That's absolutely something we could explore. Again, there's a difference between using a dog for recovery and using a drone for recovery. It's different language. So the dog recovery absolutely allows you currently to just use dogs to recover an unrecovered animal, wounded or unrecovered, which is very vague and leaves a lot of room. The language in the Federal Airborne Hunting Act is quite different. It is very specific that device can't be used really in any manner to aid in the process. So, and as a federal act, it has very strict parameters. So it's really two different paths these are going, but both of them in any situation from an operator running a business, any type of waiver, or clarification he could get up front would definitely support his position with regards to enforcement and how we would view that after the fact. I mean, I should mention it's not enforcement's goal to be, to try to make this a complicated situation. We're just trying to unpack the rules that we're given and trying to clear up some of the language that we're seeing drone operators as well as dog handlers struggle with. So this was just a first step to just clean up the language of unrecovered versus mortally wounded.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
The technology involved here, they use these drones in other states, don't they, to track dead deer?
So it is my understanding that yes, this is popular in other states,
Yeah.
particularly Texas and out west.
And
Yes.
it's heat censored, right?
Yes, so some use thermal, some use just regular night vision, but thermal seems to be
The going thing.
the going thing. That is correct.
Okay.
It's a very distinct heat signature. These are very, very well put together machines, and when you look at the footage, you can see deer moving. We've recovered footage from some of these devices that you can see an animal that was shot at night with a thermal device, and as it's running, you can see fluids coming out the side of it that are hot. It's very, very detailed. So it's
So
not difficult to tell that an animal's
Right, with the
still alive.
heat sensors that are in there, there could be, I guess, a set of parameters that you could look at and be able to tell maybe a little better if this animal is indeed mortally wounded. And if it's losing temperature, it's probably dead. So I'm just interested because I've tracked many a deer in my life through thickets where I came out with my clothes barely on. You know how that goes. So I'm very interested in this technology, and I hate to lose a deer. So anyway, that was just a question.
All right. Any other questions?
Thank you.
All right.
Rick. All right, so with that, any other questions about the NOI as presented?
Yes. I guess we can move on with the NOI, get a motion to pass.
One more little slide. We're going to accept public comment at the Wildlife and Fisheries Commission monthly meetings through March 7th. And then you can also get those public comments to me through March 7th. You can submit them directly to me by snail mail, email, phone call, however you want to reach me. I will get that. Depending on the amount of public comment that I receive, I always forward that to the commission or Miss Susan. I'll give it to Miss Susan. She forwards it to you. If it's a lot, I provide it weekly, bi-weekly. If it's not, I'll probably just send it to you the week before, the Tuesday before the commission meeting that we're fixing to have. If it's something contentious, I'll certainly let y'all know that there's a lot of comment and something y'all can be thinking about as a group.
I do have one further question. How much attention was paid to what Arkansas and Mississippi's the wording of their regulations?
So we looked at the neighboring states. So Major Owens referenced that. So we looked at the neighboring states, especially for the dog tracking language, Mississippi and Arkansas and Texas. I know Jonathan looked at all those states. Scott Durham did also, and that's kind of what we settled on. And then as Major Owens talked about, his group looked at their states, and we use the mortally wounded language because we kind of borrowed that from other states. So that's consistent with the other states around us is what we're using.
Mr.
Right.
Chairman, I
Yeah.
move to adopt.
All right, we got a motion on the floor to adopt the NOI. Second by Kevin. All in favor of the NOI, state and I.
All right.
Motion passes.
Thank you for your
there,
time.
Tom. All right. Next, I'm gonna deviate a little bit because I kind of messed up. I want to introduce our new commissioner, Wendell Ludo. And Wendell, if you can just introduce yourself and tell the audience a little bit about you, that'll be perfect. I apologize for doing it. Yeah, I just missed you. That's it.
No, you're fine. So my name's Wendell Luno. I'm from Alexandria, Louisiana, 27. Born and raised in Alexandria, went to school at LSU and graduated in industrial engineering. Been a lifelong hunter and fisherman my entire life. Had the chance to hunt some truly great public land here in Louisiana. Grew up hunting Catahoula Lake my entire life. Had the chance to work with some pretty amazing people around this state and other states from a conservation standpoint, especially on whitetail management. Very heavily involved in that. I've got a side business that deals with whitetail management. I don't know if any of y'all know from a biology standpoint, Dr. Harry Jacobson, worked with him some, and then Dr. James Kroll on a few places that I've had the opportunity to go hunt. So looking forward to this opportunity to make this state better. Like I said, I think y'all can probably tell by I'm a few years younger than some of these gentlemen up here, but looking forward to bring a different perspective up here and make sure that this state keeps going forward in the right direction, that we give people my age and people younger than me the opportunity to go out there and explore the same natural resources in the same game that I had the opportunity to do growing up here. So thank you all.
All right. Thank you, Wendell. And I'm sure you're gonna learn a lot while you're up here. That's it. We appreciate you coming on board. Right there. All right, moving on, Larry Reynolds, you want to give us an update on the White Lake Conservation Area?
Go through the technology here. I'm glad I don't have to deal with drones. Holy cow. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. My name is Larry Reynolds. I probably shouldn't have stuck my nose in with the waterfowl zones and splits without introducing myself, but I was a longtime waterfowl program manager. I'm now the director that oversees White Lake Wetland Conservation Area. And I'm here to give an update of what we've been doing since you passed a resolution requesting funding back in February of last year. Most of you have seen the first part of this presentation, but some of you have not. And I feel the need to lay the groundwork for why you passed that resolution back in February before moving forward. So I'll go quickly, but I apologize for boring a few of you. White Lake Wetland Conservation Area is about 72,000 acres in Vermilion Parish, bordered on the south by the north shoreline of White Lake. It's about 74% freshwater marsh and 26% agricultural land. And it provides some of the most important freshwater marsh habitat for waterfowl and wetland wildlife in the state. Indeed, our primary goals and objectives at White Lake are to sustain and manage that wetland habitat, to manage the wildlife species associated with it with a primary focus on waterfowl, but also to maintain an agricultural presence on White Lake WCA leased properties when feasible and compatible with waterfowl management. These habitats that we're looking to conserve are threatened. They're threatened by deteriorating infrastructure. The Gulf Intercoastal Waterway cuts through 12 miles of the property at the north end.
which gives us 24 miles of shoreline, of which 22 of those miles are completely unprotected, meaning that there's no barrier to wave action or storm activity. The intercoastal waterway is over twice its original width. On both banks, all that's left is the descending slope of the original levee, and it threatens not only our habitat, but also private farmland outside the borders of White Lake. Thus, we're seeking long-term protection for those levees on the GIWW. This photograph's becoming famous. This is from Hurricane Harvey flooding in 2017. That's one of our lessees, large equipment out there, trying to maintain what's left of that remnant spoil bank, and got overwhelmed. The north shore of White Lake is also eroding away, though at a slower rate from some places in Louisiana, which makes it difficult for us to get priority from QIPRA or other coastal restoration programs. However, there are 11 miles of rock breakwaters protecting the southern shoreline. That's not even the predominant winds in that area. So we definitely have a need for shoreline protection along the 16 miles of White Lake boundary. There's a spot on White Lake that has breached twice, in Hurricane Rita in 2005, Hurricane Delta in 2020. And that levee separates White Lake itself from the Unit 2 refuge, one of the most important habitats at White Lake. And here's what that levee looked like in October of 2020 after Hurricane Delta. You can see all the inundation behind it. Unfortunately, when Ducks Unlimited and their contractors came in to fix it, there is no more usable material on site. This is a spot that has probably breached multiple times long before the property belonged to the state of Louisiana. And we had to barge in 6 barges of material to fix that levee at that critical junction. And then, of course, in 2021, we were cursed. It's a hard thing to say after this past year, but we were cursed with high water and consistent southeast winds that eroded that 12-foot levee to about 2 feet in spots. And so we have a critical need to reestablish and rock armor that 400 to 500 foot spot that has been that's been the location of a couple of breaches recently. Unfortunately, levee breaches have become commonplace along the Florence Canal. Last year, well, I guess it'd be year before last now, 2 breaches formed on the Florence Canal. We had to repair one of them twice and establish a no-wake zone to allow the material to settle. And part of it has collapsed again, so it will require additional attention. And of course, there's oil structures out there. This is actually one of our highest priority spots for rebuilding the levee that protects Unit 2 at the south end. Unfortunately, it's almost impossible to work there because of the oil pipelines and infrastructure. It's one of the difficult things about working out here. This is at the western edge of Unit 2, and we've actually had to shut down the pump on Unit 2 because all we were doing was pumping water into the Florence that was then flowing through here back into the unit. So we have prioritized our infrastructure needs to protect these habitats and, most importantly, maintain our management capability. We've got to rebuild and rearmor that White Lake breach site. That's our highest priority. We need rock breakwaters along the GIWW, and we have some estimates of the cost. This was from a little over a year ago, about a year and a half ago, and these amounts have turned out to be extremely naive in the current market. More about that later.
We need rock breakwaters on the White Lake shoreline, and we need to reconstruct the levee around Unit 2, where we're seeing breaches fairly often. We actually need to rebuild all impoundments and protection levees to the new 6.5-foot NAVD 88 standard. And we've got oil and gas equipment that needs removed or relocated to assist with long-term levee maintenance. These were our highest priorities that we set as we go and tackle maintaining this habitat long-term. Unfortunately, we don't have the resources. Now, this financial report is different than the one that was in the presentation that was given you, because I just got the information yesterday after everybody returned from the holidays. And so these numbers will be different, but you will get the point. You can see that last year, 22-23, we generated $1.2 million in revenue, but we had a little over $1 million in expenses. So we run at a surplus. The financial report that's in your presentation shows about a $350,000 surplus. And so we run a $200,000 to $350,000 surplus every year. Our strategy has been to save that surplus money for 3 or 4 years and then go find matching partners to be able to do some substantial project that can help us maintain these habitats. But we're talking about peanuts compared to what's necessary on the landscape. We need help. And so last summer, we embarked on an effort to increase awareness, emphasis, and priority of the White Lake properties. There was a discussion. It wasn't intended. It wasn't on the agenda, but there was a discussion at the August commission meeting about White Lake and the issues we're facing out there, which turned into a comprehensive update on White Lake goals, status, and restoration projects, and especially funding needs at the September 2022 commission meeting. We had a presentation and a field site visit at White Lake attended by Senator Henskins, Representative Bouryak, Commissioners McPherson and Segrera, and Delta Waterfowl leadership in November of 2022. And what we really got to was the resolution urging state funding, a second site visit targeting policymakers, and letters of support from NGOs and other partners. And that resolution was approved by this commission in February of 2023. The important components of that resolution, I'm not going to go through the whole thing here, is that the 2002 act of donation by BP provides that the state and BP have a common purpose in the conservation and protection in perpetuity of the White Lake property, and that White Lake property be retained in perpetuity predominantly in its natural habitat. So not all farmland, not all wetlands, not all parking lots and shopping malls. It's to remain predominantly in its natural habitat at the date of donation. Act 613 of the 2004 regular session turned control of White Lake over to the Department of Wildlife and Fisheries, stating that the commission will establish a conservation management plan and that the department is to raise revenue from the property to support management and provide public hunting, fishing, and other recreation opportunities. And then it went on to justify that request. Statewide, there are declining freshwater marsh habitats, especially of the value of those provided by White Lake. It provides critical refuge in an area of intense hunting pressure and high waterfowl harvest. Amico Pool, it was called in the 90s when we did some pintail research out there, is a well-established refuge area in this region of the state. It's the foundation of the only remaining restoration project for endangered whooping cranes. And a large portion of it has been impacted by levee breaches. I've already spelled that out ad nauseum. and thus immediate funding is needing for repair and long-term maintenance. And therefore be it resolved that the commission hereby urges and requests significant state funding for investment for the repair and protection of critical levee infrastructure along the GIWW and waterfowl management units that are in jeopardy of further decline to protect and enhance this valuable wetland habitat. That's what you passed in February of 2023. So what have we been doing with that? You did your part. You gave us a tool. What have we done with it? Well, we hit the ground immediately. Funding for White Lake Wetland Conservation Area was this department's highest priority prior to the last legislative session, and working with commission members, legislative and conservation partners, we somehow got $30 million included in the governor's budget request. With many letters of support, we were on our way. We made detailed presentations and discussions with legislators at White Lake on March 6th and with the Speaker of the House on March 21st to support that budget request. And while we were playing politics, we still have work to do on the landscape. Using $200,000 in a supplemental appropriation that was orchestrated by the Louisiana Waterfowl Working Group, we installed new engines to restore pumping capacity to Unit 2. We had two 77-year-old engines out there that had constantly broken down. We could no longer get parts for, so we took parts from two to make one functional to pump the year before, but we had to quit pumping because of the levee breaches. We were just circulating the water. But the Louisiana Waterfowl Working Group got $200,000 for us. And I'm going to say right now, before I get into the woe of other things, this is the only project that I have done in the 2.5 years I've been in this position that came in anywhere near budget. We had $200,000, and for $209,000, we got brand new engines installed. We had new pipe retrofitted, and we got this done and operational. Hopefully the levees will hold so we can use it. Didn't need it much this year because of the drought. Wasn't anything to pump. So, but we got that done. What else have we done? We conducted an ecological review starting in mid-April to revisit management priorities and refine the draft management plan. Remember, the legislator instructed the commission in 2004 to develop a management plan. There have been a number of drafts since 2004, but it's never been completed. And so it's my goal to get that completed early this year. And one of the first things is to engage a group of professionals to help us critically look at our management plan, to objectively evaluate the habitat quality, and to make suggestions to help us move forward. Dr. Joe Lancaster of the Gulf Coast Joint Venture served as the moderator. Participants included he and Andy Nyman, wetland ecology professor at LSU, Cassidy Lejeune, DU's Director of Conservation Programs here in Louisiana, his colleague Todd Marandino, DU Director of Conservation Programs in Texas. These are men I've worked with for a lot of years, putting waterfowl habitat on the ground. Greg Linscomb, a real familiar name around here, retired LWF biologist and currently the land manager for Continental Land and Fur. Mike Rezatek, Upper Coast Wetland Ecosystem Project Leader for Texas Parks and Wildlife, and Scooter Trosclair at Rockefeller Refuge. I was trying to make this completely non-LDWF, so we had outside people providing their expertise, but it's impossible to exclude Scooter. He's built too many levees, he's got too many contacts, and he was critical of our management at White Lake. He was critical of our elevation data. He was critical of the things that we have done in the past. But after spending 3 days out there, shoulder to shoulder with us on those levees, shoulder to shoulder with us in Unit 2, which is 3.5 feet lower than the other marsh because of the loss of elevation there. He's now become one of our strongest advocates. So I'm kind of being defensive because I included an LWF guy in this outside review. But I sequestered those guys for 3 days at White Lake, and we started in the air. We took turns, put them all in the airplane so that they could see the whole area from above, where the water comes from, where it goes to, the outside influences, the juxtaposition of the habitats. They knew what they were looking at. And then we went over the entire area. This is the crew in airboats in Unit 2. You can see Dr. Andy Nyman taking core samples to explore the source of the elevation loss within that Unit 2 unit. We looked at elevations, vegetation, water control structures. This was a water control structure Ducks Unlimited finished about 1.5 years ago to give us better drainage capacity for our hunt unit. Problems always getting water off in this habitat. We showed them the good, the bad, and the ugly, and there is some good to show out here at White Lake. In 2013, Ducks Unlimited built a little over 1 mile of rock breakwater. And look at how the marsh has reclaimed the area between the breakwater and the old levee. We know this works. We've seen it work in a lot of places. We can get rock on that GIWW, the waves crashing, the sediment fills up, and we reclaim that land. But there are places where we've got garbage material there at the bottom. That was a levee that TPIC, our current oil company on the area, built, and it immediately collapsed. And then the ugliness I've already discussed of the oil infrastructure out there, that not that oil is ugly, but it's impossible to rebuild that levee with that infrastructure there. And that's in one of our highest priority areas. And so these guys got to see all that. They spent about 2.5 days in the field and a little over a day in the office. And these were their limited findings. The risk from levee failure is clearly the highest priority project related issue that we have to deal with. The breach site is the highest priority. But they changed our priorities from where we had our next priority being the White Lake shoreline. They changed it to the Unit 2 levee, that was a higher priority, that the White Lake shoreline could wait. It could be expensive. We had dredge issues. And so they reprioritized the Unit 2 levee over the White Lake shoreline. But the risk of the GIWW levee failure really bothered them, especially Scooter. They said, you know, we need some graphic detail about that. And so Randy Myers set our GIS crew to work to look at the elevation data, the water level data, and what the risk is to all of our habitats should the levees along the GIWW fail. And this is what the habitat looks like with the levees intact. This is the flooding. That dark blue is 1 to 2 feet. The yellow's 2 to 3, and the red is 4+ feet. This is a flooding that occurs if the GIWW levee fails during drought conditions, during the water levels that we saw this year. Under average water conditions, this is the flooding. And what I want to draw attention to is look at the flooding outside of the White Lake boundary. This is not just a White Lake concern. This is a Vermilion Parish concern. And what if we get flood conditions like Hurricane Harvey? Now that's 4+ feet of flooding well outside White Lake's boundary. And this is the data that we're using to try and bring other partners to the table to help us with shoreline protection. This is a serious concern for Vermilion Parish. We are now talking with the police jury and other people to build a partnership to help us with the restoration of these levees. Other ecological findings, given the changes in the surrounding landscape, an effort to increase food production is needed. The landscape cannot support the number of ducks that it could even 15 years ago with sugarcane, with crawfish farming, changes in the rice industry. And so they are pushing us to explore relationships with current lessees to improve habitat. The fact that White Lake leased habitat allows sugarcane and crawfish is anathema to good wildlife management. We need to strengthen language in future leases and consider some subsidies. If we're forcing that landowner to do some other management practices, let's consider some subsidies. More intensive management of Unit 4. I haven't talked about Unit 4, but that's where the whooping crane pin is. That's where we can pump water out and water in. It's where we have the most water control. It's also where our herbicide treatments have generated pretty good food producing habitat. So we need to focus more on Unit 4 and increase herbicide use in Unit 1. That's the 17,000 acre hunt area to reduce vegetation density. We need to continue to use practices that promote accretion in Unit 2. Ensure that drawdowns don't expose sediment to further oxidation, and explore opportunities to get some dredge material in there to try and bring that negative 3.5 back up to something that's easier to work with. We didn't have any success with that this year. The drought drew that unit down about as dry as it's going to be drawn. Now, these recommendations are being put into the management plan. The final draft of the management plan is ready to go back out to these 8 individuals for their review, and we hope to get it finished up early this year. What else have we done? We've initiated a cooperative endeavor agreement in mid-April with Ducks Unlimited to rebuild and rock armor that breach site at the southwest corner that I've been showing pictures, where we don't have any material. And DU came up with $300,000 to do that. Well, they come up with $300,000 to do that. They've done rock armoring on the GIWW for us. They've been doing the surveying to get this project on the ground. Well, then let's get them involved in conducting the surveys and permit drawings in case we get that $30 million that's in the governor's budget. So we've included them in this cooperative endeavor agreement to do the surveys, collect the data, do the permit drawings for the breakwaters on the GIWW, the White Lake shoreline, and refurbishment of the Unit 2 levees. This is the drawing that they put together for the preliminary engineering for fixing that breach site, and the project went out to bid. And the bid came in at the low bid came in at $534,000. We had $275,000 for construction. And this is a constant problem. That's why I said that pump project was the only project I've done since I've been in this position that came in anywhere near budget. But I can cite 4 or 5 projects that have come in 70 to 100% and more over budget. We've got boat sheds at White Lake. We've got equipment sheds at State Wildlife. Every time we put a project out for bid, we find out that we are woefully underfunded, and this was another one. But this was our highest priority project. We can't let this go. We can't quit on this. So we're using the Ducks Unlimited License Plate Fund. We call it the Waterfowl Fund here. It's money collected from the DU license plate money that is administered jointly by LWF and Ducks Unlimited. And so it's perfect for this. And we had just enough in that fund to make this project happen. So construction, we heard the rocks being delivered January 24th, and this project is going to construction at the end of January. But this is what else Ducks Unlimited is doing. Here is the permit drawings for the rock breakwaters on the GIWW, the drawings that are being made for the North Shore of White Lake based on an ongoing QIPRA project. But look at those costs that I've outlined in yellow. And so $3.7 million a mile on the GIWW, 5.3 million per mile on White Lake. My estimates that I had early in this presentation were humorous. Once you see these in this market at this time, with rock being pretty much dominated by the LNG plants, we're in trouble. Quipper's having trouble coming in under budget with their shoreline protection projects as well. But this is the work that Ducks Unlimited is doing for us, is almost completed. And then there is an opportunity. We have talked before about the difficulty of using NACA money here at White Lake. The value of the White Lake donation in 2002 was rolled into a matching conservation plan, and it was used to fund 19 NACA grants across the Gulf Coast, only 2 of which were on White Lake itself. But now we've utilized all of that value for match. So it's difficult to compete for NACA money, but Ducks Unlimited recently got an easement that provides acreage that can be used for match for a NACA grant to provide money at White Lake. And we're looking to get $1 million to compete for $1 million, 3 grant tracks, 3 match tracks. What we're doing now is trying to figure how to play this particular grant proposal. What is the top priority for White Lake Wetland Conservation Area work? Do we use it for rock on the GIWW? Do we use it for levee work on Unit 2? And what we decide to do may largely depend on this potential partnership with CPRA. CPRA was appropriated $2 million for shoreline protection in Vermilion Parish that is supposedly earmarked for White Lake. But it's intended for engineering and design. We're hoping that we can integrate it with work that Ducks Unlimited is already doing. And so we had a site visit with CPRA project managers and engineers on December 5th. We went to the same places I've shown you. We've talked about our priorities. We've talked about what we could do with $2 million. And what these engineers told us is that what we need at White Lake is not complicated. It's been done many times in many places. $2 million worth of engineering and design is not necessary for what needs to be done in White Lake, especially with what Ducks Unlimited has already done. And so they were intending to head back to speak with CPRA leaders, and that's where we are right now in trying to build this partnership with CPRA. So that's what we've been up to. And before I entertain any questions, I just want to say a couple final things. That there is a lot remaining to deal with at White Lake. Beyond coordination with CPRA, the NACA grant submittal, with Ducks Unlimited, I mean, we're dealing with almost unbearable cost overruns. The amount of money that we're talking about here is brutally high. And we're seeing a lack of progress on other projects. You'll notice, Commissioner Segrera, I said nothing about the Guillotine Gate. Any project that FP&C gets involved with just gets dragged out, state procurement regulations. And so the reason I've said nothing is because I have nothing. The designer has not provided us with a design that can go out for bid yet. It's that way with the roofs. It's that way with the boat shed. Lots of issues that we're dealing with in getting things constructed. And although I'm whining about my situation at White Lake, that goes for almost everybody everywhere in this particular market. But what I want to say to you gentlemen in closing is that the need hasn't changed. You all know we didn't get the $30 million in the last legislative session. That changed nothing about the levies. It changed nothing about the needs. It changed nothing about the quality of the habitat that needs protecting out there, that needs managing. And so that resolution that you passed in February of last year is no less important today than it was then. And I appreciate you letting me take so much of your time.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
over here, Randy at the table.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay, I'm sorry.
Just
Randy.
real quick, I thank Larry for putting this presentation together. I mean, very thorough job, giving everyone an update, remind everyone that we are working diligently to try to put these pieces together, to find the funding necessarily. We worked with the governor's office last year, this past legislative session. 30 million was requested, 35 million, whatever that number was, but it was taken out. Legislators didn't see that money made it to the department's budget. So the 2 million Larry referred to, we are working with CPRA on trying to find ways to utilize those dollars. I want to just mention one quick thing that we are constantly asked about the intercoastal waterway and the responsibility of the Corps of maintaining and repairing the damage that has been done. We have been provided a document. Everyone has seen the document. We're familiar with the document that the local parish governments when the intercoastal was being project was being implemented, the state and the parishes signed off on a document indicating that O&M of that would be the local responsibility. So that kind of puts us in a position that we have moved forward with of us trying to seek state and local dollars to fix the ICWW concern. So I know there's a lot of discussion about that out there, that this is a Corps project, that the Corps should be responsible. We have worked with our congressional delegation trying to find those dollars to help with this as well. We just have not been that successful. So just wanted to remind everybody of that.
Larry, let me act, then I'm gonna let you. It was a great presentation, but let me ask you, does the Vermilion Parish, do they have a port commission?
Do they have a what?
A port commission that actually regulates the intercoastal waterway?
I don't know that. We've been dealing with the police jury.
Okay.
But and these are new conversations. We actually had not, we've kind of been, most of the coastal issues had kind of been ignored by Vermilion Parish administration over the years. Now granted, I'm new to this, so when I say something, I may be stepping on people's toes, but I don't know the answer to your question, Mr. Chairman.
The reason, Max,
Mr.
I
Chairman,
said-
there's no
There
commission.
is
There's
no port commission there?
Okay.
There's a jury and there's a coastal restoration committee that made a master plan and brings projects forward that are important to Vermilion.
Right. It's just my concern, if the intercoastal waterway is the problem that's causing it, and that's regulated by the Corps of Engineers, it's a Corps of Engineers should be, delegating money to repair it. I knew in other parishes where intercoastal pass, the Corps does maintain, on it. They got different ways where the Corps, can get spoilage out of the intercoastal and then pump it into, substantial places, when they do it. It's just a matter of politics, should I say, getting it done. But I didn't know that they didn't have a port, just a police jury and all, and they may not even know about any of this maintenance that the Corps should be doing, while it's destroying, our wetlands, of the state right there. So I just think you're the man for the job. You just need to keep on pushing. That's it. Right there.
I'm really good at
Go and
defining the
raise hell
problem,
with-
Mr. Chairman.
raise hell
Finding
with the
solutions, not so
police.
much.
with the police jail. And I know it's unfortunate we didn't get any money from the state, this past budget, which should have been done, to protect some of this wetland that we have. But Kevin, you have something else you want to say?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to thank Randy and Larry for, we got this together. We got Ducks Unlimited. We had Delta Waterfowl. We had the representatives from that area. We went, got us to White Lake. We identified some of the problems. It was something very important to me because it's an area that I live in, and I understand from the duck habitat, it's important to the ducks. We did this, y'all took us out, and y'all didn't just sit on it. Y'all continued working on things, and that's appreciated. We need to continue doing that. And although we didn't get the money we were trying to get in the governor's budget, I don't think we're going away. We're going to continue trying, and we need to try every avenue that we can. I know you stole a little thunder with the guillotine gate. I didn't get to ask you that question. But Quipper, I know that we have less land loss rates here in the southwestern side of the state. But I still think we should be exploring every avenue, every funding source that we should be possibly looking at putting forward some type of Quipper project, even if it's a demonstration project of something. There's always someone coming to those Quipper meetings that want to demonstrate something that may help. I just urge you and your department to try to look at that angle also, and something may happen. We throw something up on the wall, it may stick. But thank you for continuing to work on this and pushing forward. And if there's any way that I can help, and any of the commissioners, I'm sure that they're all on board on trying to make sure this is taken care of and fixed.
Well, I appreciate that. And the fact that you're going to be on this commission for a long time from now. We are trying to think a little out of the box. David Minton, for example, has these T structures that were designed for shoreline protection on the Gulf Coast shore, and a demonstration project on the GIWW. Why not at White Lake? And so we are, and Scooter Trosclair, another outcome of that ecological review. He lives outside of the box, thinking about ways to get money. And Lance Ardwan is now the manager. Skylar Dartez took a position in Lafayette, now in our department leadership. And Lance Ardwan was Scooter Trosclair's supervisor at Rockefeller. He's now he's now the manager at White Lake. And we're constantly talking, Kevin, and we need people in your position to get us in the door there. I don't think we would have pulled off those meetings without your assistance and Commissioner McPherson's annoying perseverance sometimes. There's a word for that, but no, we are going to continue. This habitat's too valuable for us to forget. And I don't know. Yeah. And Rebecca Trish sitting over there just climbs in my pocket and festers often enough about this that it's not going to go away. So.
Very good. Thank you. Rebecca, keep putting pressure.
Kevin, I have a question. What was I was trying to look at it up in the minute with Mr. Joe McPherson, with Commissioner McPherson last month about the White Lake deal that, I don't know, he wanted something passed, you didn't want it passed. Do you remember any of that?
Well, that's another resolution that he wanted this commission to look at regarding carbon storage on White Lake, actually asking a particular company to evaluate the possibility of a carbon storage project at White Lake. Before we do that, we've got to explore with legal
the terms of the deed of donation and I mean, we've got to find out if that's a legitimate activity that we can engage in out there.
Okay, I get it.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
did I
No,
butt in
thank-
again?
Thank you, Larry. That was perfect. Thank you.
That's it.
I should quit missing opportunities to shut up. Is that what you're saying?
Any other questions for Larry? No question, Larry. Great job, great presentation right there. Keep up the good work and keep us informed on the White Lake project for us.
I appreciate that.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. All right. Next, we have Mr. Steve Smith gonna give us the NOI update.
Good morning, Commissioners, Mr. Chairman. It's a pleasure to be here today. My name is Steve Smith. I'm an Operations Program Manager for our Wildlife Division. Our Operations Program handles our WMA management activities as well as our private lands work that the Wildlife Division conducts statewide. My areas of responsibility are the Monroe, Lafayette, and Hammond field offices, which brings me here today to present to you for your consideration the adoption of a notice of intent on ecotour activities on WMAs. First, I'll start with the reasons why we're here today and why we feel it necessary to present this notice of intent for your consideration. Currently, to the best of our understanding and knowledge, ecotour activities are occurring on Maurepas Swamp and Pearl River WMAs. We feel it's to a large extent, although we don't know the exact amount. We are confident that that is going on. We do know that there's a large demand for these types of activities. There's a lot of people, a lot of tourism, a lot of interest in outdoor recreation within New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and North Shore areas. So with that being said, for those reasons, we wish to present this notice of intent as a way to provide a mechanism to facilitate this activity in a manner that's conducive to our management on those WMAs. That's both habitat and species management, as well as compatibility with WMA user groups, normal WMA user groups that are already out there and other activities that are already going on. We know that these activities result in and have the potential for habitat degradation, as well as impacts to wildlife. There's also safety concerns to our traditional users operating in waterways, small waterways with both user groups at times where neither knows the other is there, sometimes at night. There's also potential for disturbance to WMA users, especially at peak use times during our hunting seasons, that sort of activity. But we also recognize that there's benefits or potential benefits to trying to facilitate this activity. It can introduce this high demand, large user group or this audience to our WMAs, to LWF, to the outdoors, and ultimately to conservation. It can recruit new WMA users, new outdoor enthusiasts, and it could also potentially provide revenue generation for public resource management. And lastly, as I said, we don't know the exact extent of this activity, but this permitting process that I'm proposing today will allow LWF the ability to better assess the current volume and the current demand for this activity. So this is a notice of intent, just like the other that you saw earlier today, the same timeline process, the same legislative process that you would go through, a 3-month process of public comment and consideration and final adoption. It's referenced here, Title 76, Part 19. We'd basically be adding a new section, Part 19, that's Section 119. With that being said, I'll get into the specifics of that. Okay, the notice of intent presents that pursuant to RS 56-1833, and that referenced part of RS 56-1833 is what gives the commission the authority to create and govern a permitting process for this type of activity. Individuals possessing a wild Louisiana guide license may conduct commercial boat, vessel, ecotour activities on Maurepas Swamp and Pearl River WMAs only via permit issued by the Department of Wildlife and Fisheries. In this permit, it's called a special use permit. We issue these all the time statewide on various WMAs for various activities where they are needed. Some examples would be oil and gas activities, like pipeline maintenance, right-of-way access, that type of thing. But through this special use process, we'd be able to provide for this activity, and these permits would specify at a minimum what's listed here. And this is also in the document that you have in your packet, the actual notice of intent. This is just summarized on these slides. It specified dates, times, locations, routes, whereby tours could be conducted on the given WMA, the number and types of vessels or vehicles or vessels, as well as the number of individual tours or outings that will be allowed within a given time frame. Requirements for annual reporting, which would include the number of tours, number of vehicles or vessels per tour conducted, number of clients per tour conducted, the dates, the beginning and end times of all activities. Additionally, it would allow the department the ability to place any other requirements deemed necessary within these permits. Also, ecotour activities must pay to the department a license fee of $500 annually and collect a client fee of $2 per trip for each person accompanying the guide on said WMAs. Payments to be made quarterly or as determined by the Department of Wildlife and Fisheries. So there's several things that we wish to prohibit via the notice of intent. And these are things that have been observed that occur on a lot of these activities that are, as I said, are not conducive to WMA management, species management, habitat management, et cetera. Those are taking, handling, harassing, feeding, baiting, luring, or releasing of wildlife, the possession of animals, the use of airboats, and any additional activities specifically prohibited in the special use permit. And lastly, the number of permits shall be determined by the department, but shall not exceed 5 permits per approved WMA per year. With that, I will take any questions.
All right, any questions? Commission? Kevin?
Yeah, this, so how long has this been going on the WMAs, these tours and all of this? And how long has it been a concern of the department on how it's being handled?
I'm not certain how long it's been going on. I know 3 years ago, we started this process and had a draft NOI. However, it has not been presented until today. Beyond that, I don't know when it started and how long it's been going on.
Okay, yeah, I was just wondering, because, we just, I know it came up when the agenda was posted, but I didn't have any information on trying to understand the history of what's going on the WMAs with the ecotours.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
I can add a little bit of information
Go
to
ahead,
that.
Raymond.
So the activity in particular on Maurepas Swamp actually began with one person or one vendor in the previous, at least 9 or 10 years ago, in the Undersecretary Barnes administration. A special use permit was issued to be utilized on Maurepas Swamp. And then from there, it began to grow, like unpermitted activity, where folks were actually using the WMA without a permit from the secretary. So when we did the license restructure, there was actually a section in there that addressed this particular issue. And we had worked with some of the kayak clubs and folks that come in and, asking to allow this activity. So we've been working on this for a while and trying to figure it out, but right now it's just kind of folks are operating without any set provisions. That some of them aren't even getting a permit. So this will put this in action as a rule so that we can have our enforcement guys and start enforcing some of these regulations and making it fair in terms of you and I or any other user has to have a permit, an access permit to utilize the WMA. This is a commercial activity that's occurring, and they are not properly licensed to do that activity by having possession of that permit. It's just trying to get everybody back into compliance and allow that activity.
Thank you for the explanation.
I have a question. Do we have any idea how many vendors are trying to represent themselves as a tour guide or whatever?
To the best understanding that we have, there's at least 3 on Maurepas Swamp major operations. There may be some smaller operations that may come and go that we're unaware of or may no longer exist. But at least 3 on Maurepas, and I believe 3 on Pearl River.
And they charging fees to take people out?
Correct.
Okay. All righty, that's what, so I was just wondering if I was an individual boat and I took cousins or whatever out, but I'm not charging them anything, but these guys are actually running tour service.
Yes, sir. To our
Yeah,
understanding, it's a commercial
So,
activity.
yes, okay. Now I understand that. So, all righty. All right,
Right.
we need a motion if we're going forward on this NOI. And unless y'all have any other questions on it.
I'll also add briefly that the timeframe for public comments is posted here, just the same as the other NOI. We will be accepting public comments, and I will accumulate and provide those to you guys as each month.
Let me ask you on this NOI, it's gonna apply to all WMAs in the state, right?
This is specific to Maurepas Swamp and
just-
Pearl River WMAs. This would
Okay.
provide a mechanism to
Just
allow for
those
that
two.
activity through permit on those 2 WMAs specifically.
All right. Do we have a motion? You got a motion by Kevin to adopt the NOI. Do I get a second from anybody? You got a second by? You moved to adopt it, right? Okay, and then we got a second by Wendell. And then all in favor of the NOI as presented. Should I ask for public comment first?
Yes, sir. Please ask for any public comment prior to
Okay,
taking.
all righty. Anybody in the public wants to address this before we take a vote on it? No public. I'm gonna close that nomination. So all in favor, state aye. Aye. Motion passes. That NOI is gonna be adopted.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All righty, thank you. All right. Well, all things come to an end, so my chairmanship is going to be concluded after today. So we accepted nominations for a new chairman going forward. So we're going to ask for nominations for a new chair. Okay, we got one nomination for Brandon. Anybody else? All right, no other nominations. Brandon, I can declare you chairman going forward. All right, next we have a vice chairman. We need nominations for vice chair. All right, and with that being said, Gene, you're gonna be vice chair going into the 2024, if y'all accept right there. So other than that, any other questions? No other questions? We're gonna ask for adjournment. Move. Oh, wait, one more before we adjourn. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't. I'm missing Eloise. Good.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Mr. Chairman, thank you for your service and your dedication to this department. I know this is the last time you'll be in the chairman's seat, but it will not be the last time you attend meetings.
No.
Thank you for your service.
All right.
And I thought of 2 things that I did not mention. One is to thank Governor John Bell Edwards for the honor of serving the state of Louisiana. And I appreciate his entrusting me to this. It has been a pleasure working. And also, The executive staff that's here, Ed Pratt, Randy Myers, Brian McClinton, Cole Garrett, Patrick Banks, Colonel Rachel Zaccanelli, Michelle Bull. I could not have been surrounded by more dedicated and reliable people. And I also want to give a recognition to Tina Kuhlman, who was our executive assistant in the secretary's office, whose last day was just last week. She has been accepted to med school. And so she will further her education in a much different environment than here. And I also want to thank Wendy Brogdon, who has been also an executive assistant, who has just done a fantastic job dealing with a lot of difficulties in her life, but she has always come through. So to all of you who have given so much and asked so little, I really appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob.
Mr. Chairman, I probably should have said something when Rob first, excuse me, Secretary Shadowin first came up here. Rob's fine. You know, I was a young college student and Rob was a young attorney in the Student Government Association at Tech, paid him to come give legal advice to the students who got in trouble and legal advice. And thankfully I was, you know, but for the grace of God, I was not one of them. But, you know, our paths just kept crossing. He married a young lady from my community and our paths have just kind of intertwined for the last 40 years. And this has certainly been a big intersection for me. And I appreciate working with you and serving in this capacity at the same time as you. And I hope our paths cross again soon.
They will.
Yeah.
They will.
I'm sure
Thank
they
you.
will.
Thank you, Commissioner Brister.
All right, any other? Anyone else? Well, thank you, Rob.
Thank you.
Did Great
Thank all
job.
of y'all.
And I enjoyed being chairman. I hope I've done my due diligence to the state as chairman, and I'm sure Brandon's gonna do the same thing, so. Any other public comment? With no other public, I'll ask for adjournment. So move, second by Andy, all in favor, aye, we adjourn.